I'd like to welcome you to our first session here, Navigating the Future of Auto Retail Through Customer Satisfaction. My name is Pedram Faed. I'm the Vice President of Partner Success and the General Manager of our CRM product. And today joining me is Dan Daly, Vice President of U.S. Auto Trust. And Dan and I have been rapping about so many different discussions that are specific to customer satisfaction. And so we thought, let's have a conversation about this, Dan. So I thought maybe you can kind of share a little bit of your background, Dan, and the organization you work for.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Very exciting to be part of what Tekion's doing and being able to work with you. So thank you for having me. A little bit about me. I started as a janitor, and I worked my way up. And somebody gave me an opportunity one day to sell cars. And never sold anything before, was never trained on sales, and they gave me an opportunity that I took advantage of, right? I said, this is a door somebody's opened for me, and I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to try it. And getting my feet on the ground, I had to figure out my way pretty quickly, right? So what I did was I automatically kind of looked at this traditional sales board that they used to have on the wall, the heroes to the zeros, you know? And the boss said, where do you want to sit? And I said, the guy at the bottom, put me next to him. It's like, oh, God, you don't want to sit next to that guy. Nobody sits next to that guy. I want to sit next to him. And my thought was, he's not doing well for a reason. And I want to figure out why. And everything that he did, everything that he said, I wrote it down. I made a mental note of it. And I made sure never to do it. Whether it was hanging up on a customer and, crumpling up a note that was a lead that somebody was ready to buy a car and throwing it in the garbage. It was always somebody else's fault, right? Sure. So after about a month of that, I went back to him. I said, boss, put me next to the guy up at the top. We used to call him the Rock because he was the Rock. And I sat next to, his name was Alex, sat next to Alex for a month or so. And I did the same thing. Everything that he did, I copied. I made it my own. And I said, please, I said, thank you. And I called back every customer before I left. And I tried to make myself valuable every day, whether I was washing cars, selling cars, acting as a sales manager, finance manager, right? And I think what it did was allow me future opportunities, right? And I had really good people around me that taught me the business that if I didn't have those people starting out, probably wouldn't be here today, to be honest. And was given an opportunity to just take the next step. And even if I was not sure about how to do it, I just took it anyway, right? I'll figure it out. But throughout those steps, I realized that everybody that was successful along the way in those same positions kind of built themselves as their own brand.
Yep.
And that was really early on for me. One of the big key factors is everybody sells the same car. You can buy a BMW, a Mercedes, a Land Rover, a Jaguar, an Aston Martin. Get the same car anywhere in the country. What makes it different? Why do I want to get it from this person? And it was because I want to deal with that person. It's the relationship, right? And what makes you different is your own brand. So that's how I got started in automotive. I started and just did the best I could in every position to make myself valuable, hoping that somebody would give me an opportunity to move up.
No, that's incredible, right? Because I think that everybody here at that point in time, you probably didn't know it, but the future is about experience, right? And that really is kind of the epicenter of this conversation. And I think that you said it, you hit it on the head is, look, cars have become commoditized, and so being able to buy any brand at any dealership, now the question is, well, why would I go to your dealership? And, I thought it was very fascinating from the ownership perspective of the group that you work for, where there's probably an interesting story for you to share about U.S. Auto Trust and how does it align with customer experience? So
our owner is also in the sporting industry, right? Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And previous to the Tom Brady years, right, before they won this most recent Super Bowl, there was a stretch of about 10 years there where they were just hard to watch, right? And I could say that because I'm a New York Jets fan. And,
I won't hold that against you.
Yeah. I say that because during that entire long run, right, where I think it was like 10 years or so, they didn't even make the playoffs, right? People were coming to the game on a Sunday with their friends and family, spending their money, knowing that 60% of the time their team was probably going to lose, and leave and go, that was an amazing experience. Go Bucks. I can't wait to come back and do it again. So his ultimate vision was really, how do I take that, right, and make that the automotive industry, the car business, right? Most people don't like shopping for a car. The majority of the time, it's not the best experience. I think all of us are getting better and better at that. But it was, that idea of making the customer a fan and having them leave, and understanding that whether you're a salesperson or a service advisor or manager, it's about you building your brand, building the relationship so that when that customer leaves, they go, that guy was great. He helped me service my car, paid a fair price. I had a great experience. That's it, right? It's that easy, but it's that difficult to do that. It's very difficult to
Easier said than done.
It's very difficult to do it on a consistent basis, day after day, customer after customer. So that's kind of where the secret sauce comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's obviously fascinating, right? That from an ownership perspective in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think a stat that I heard was I believe they had the highest customer satisfaction in the NFL.
So I left out that minor detail. Thank you for saving me. Yes, out of that entire stretch, right, they were rated number 1 or number 2 out of the entire NFL based on fan experience as voted on by the fans, right? So you're going up against the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Green Bay Packers, all of the premier marquee teams, and a team that didn't make the playoffs for a good stretch, rated number 1 or number 2 in fan experience, right? And that's something I know he's very proud of. And I didn't really understand it myself until I went to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play in their own stadium in the Super Bowl, right? And I'm from New York, right? So I've been to Madison Square Garden, all the Mecca kind of arenas, right? The Jets, the Giants, the Rangers, the Knicks, all of them. Sure. And, my dad and I got off the bus and, the stadium's a half a mile away. We're walking and, they have people out in the parking lot, right? Holding up this sign, and I might get this wrong, but it's, how can I help you or what's your question? Right? So that they've already broken down the barrier of, because my wife will tell me this all the time, just go ask that person for directions. And I'm like, I got it. I'll figure it out. Right? So somebody understood right away, like, just hold up a sign that says, I'm here to help you. Right? And that right there is the vision. I'm here to help you. And that experience went from the parking lot attendant who's here, I'm here to help you. How can I help you? You're going into entrance A. It's right down here on the right. You're going to make a left. Go Bucks. Thanks for coming to cheer on our team, right? And it was like, I had never experienced anything like it, right? And I said, well, that's one person. They're just doing a good job. And then I got to the second person by the escalator and the third person at the concession stand and the bathroom attendant, right? And I was like, this is different, right? And it really sunk in. They won their Super Bowl. My dad and I stayed for the presentation after the game. And I left to use the men's room. So this is 45 minutes after the whole place is going crazy. Game's over, and the bathroom was immaculate. Pedram, you could not pick up a piece of paper on the floor, and the bathroom attendant was there. Shoes were tied, shirts was tucked in, right? His jacket's buttoned. He's making the same eye contact that he was 4 hours ago. How can I help you? And that idea of how can I help you is what we're trying to build as a culture within the company.
No, I think that's an awesome story, Dan, and it was compelling enough that it really stood out to me, right, when you and I first discussed it. And I think these are the things that we all take for granted, that we don't think that small experience is enough to really make a difference, but it is. How would you translate some of these things? Of course, like, I think now that most have an understanding of, okay, we get the heritage now and the connection to experience, because sometimes it's a mural on the wall. Right. But I think in your organization, it's a testament to the organization of what they pursue, right, in their business. Are there examples that you have, like, that you're able to take today in how you guys translate that guest experience? I think the parking attendant obviously is a great reference. What happens at the game? What happens at the dealership? And what are the things that you've seen kind of maybe that are outside the norms of your general experience in automotive?
I think outside the norm maybe is that you have to understand that every single person, from the person that is sweeping the floor to the person that answers the phone to the person that runs the store, is part of that process. Yep. It's not just the service advisor for the service department and the salesperson for the sales department, right? It takes a team. And getting everybody to understand that they are part of their team, getting them to understand that it's tough. We understand it's tough. Customer service is a hard business. And being able to point out to them the small wins when they have them to try and keep building them, because it's easy to focus on the losses because there's a lot of them, right? Especially in our business, because it's retail, it's 365, there's a lot of repetition, and I think it's difficult to be able to do it consistently every single time in the beginning when you're trying to build that mindset. But it starts to grow, right? And some of the early indicators are customer satisfaction scores, and being able to get the team to understand that our customer satisfaction scores, from our perspective, we don't want to base ourselves on the national average. We bought one of the big stores early on as the first acquisition, and they had terrible CSI. What we thought was terrible CSI. At the time, the national average, I think, was 63 out of 100. And the mindset was, well, we're at 65. You're above the national average. No, sir, right? If your kid came home from school and said, great news, Dad, I got a 65 on my math test, it doesn't fly, right? So getting people that are used to seeing things as being better than the norm and being able to try and reset that norm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In your experience, Dan, would you say, when you're bringing that culture change of experience, of course, from an employee perspective, do you see more success with inspiration or motivation? And I'll tell you, I'll go kind of qualify motivation for you. Comp, right? At the end of the day, the famous, people pay them, will do what you pay them to do, right? Behaviors dictate pay plans, right? Or pay plans, dictate behaviors. How do you see it in the organization? Is it more inspiration or is it motivation from the financial lens?
I don't think one is more important than the other, right? It's they're ingredients in the souffle. And if you leave one of them out, you're going to have a pancake, right? They all go together. And whether it's a quarter of a tablespoon or a half a pound, right? They are all equally important to the whole. So, when you ask, is it inspiration or motivation, I think you have to inspire people that we can be better. Because especially in the beginning, when you're acquiring a new store and acquiring the old culture, it's easy for the new employees sometimes to say, well, let's see how long this lasts, right? These are the new guys. They're blowing us up with sunshine and probably not going to hear about it or see about it again. So the burden on us is to really be able to consistently be in front of the employees, talking to them, inspiring them, right? And I think that goes right into motivating them. And everybody's busy throughout their day, whether it's yourself, myself, service advisor, the porter. But when they see people from the corporate level spending time at the dealerships, asking questions, finding out, I love asking people, I learned this from our owner, what could we be doing better today? What should we be doing different? And in the beginning, people think it's kind of a trick question. Well, why is he asking me? I'm just the porter. Probably one of the most important positions in the whole dealership, right? And they see the whole field. So you're inspiring them by being a presence. You're inspiring them by walking the talk and motivating them at the same time by saying, listen, you're a part of this, regardless of your position. We need your help. Tell us how to make it better. So they kind of go hand in hand.
And that's great. And when you kind of really focus on this level of experience, I'm assuming that, just like, for example, if we were going to go to a restaurant, the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star obviously is going to be dollars, right? We're going to pay more for the dish that's 4-star store or, business. I'd like to hope so. But have you seen material gain in when you put in the energy with experience and it's, reflected, for example, maybe in a Yelp or a Google review, et cetera? Have you seen the correlation to be able to actually capture, the revenue aspects of experience?
1,000%, right? I think I saw it differently from the internal data, right? From each of our sales and service departments. So, we have 4 stores that are the same brands, Jaguar, Land Rover, and one of them had been struggling for a while on customer satisfaction scores. And they had thought that a big part of that was maybe we were charging too much for our service, right? So they said, well, let's reset it, right? Let's take a step back, maybe reduce our pricing in a couple of different areas, be a little bit more competitive, which is always a good thing to take a look at and keep yourself honest. And I think that'll help us get better customer satisfaction scores, right? It didn't really pan out that way, right? Because whether you spend $100 or you spend $5,000, if you had a bad experience, you had a bad experience. Totally. It's the value of the product. It's the value of the person. It's the value of the service. It's not so much the dollar. And our other stores that were the same brands did not lower their prices and continued to have high customer satisfaction scores. So I think it was a really good learning experience for that store, which we went through together, reducing the prices to come out on the other side and say, look, this is great information, right? It's not just about the price. Price usually comes last. It should come last. So
that makes a lot of sense. And then, obviously there's something interesting here. You've got one store, for example, that's on Tekion, and you have got another group that's on a competing DMS. In your perspective, when you evaluate the store that's on Tekion, maybe compared to the others, are there things that stand out to you that you believe that you're able to do at that store from a guest experience perspective that maybe you're not able to deliver on the other stores?
I would say it's different. It's not directly on a guest experience, but what it is doing is giving the employees that are using Tekion a more efficient way of working. Happier employees, less stressed, less frustrations, more efficient at work is going to translate to the customer message, right? So it does, but from 2 steps back, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah. And you've got a gentleman, I believe, that we've discussed kind of doesn't have the traditional, general management training and experience, but you've been able to groom him and to really performing. And so do you see that essentially being also wrapped into, to your point, finding a different talent pool that you can essentially work with?
It's interesting, right? Caesar, who's running the Cadillac store that's on the Tekion platform, was a general sales manager, didn't have general manager experience. Sometimes what that gives you, if you find the right person and you're lucky enough to find the right person, is somebody that is seeing it from a different perspective. And it's like the water stain on the ceiling. When it's there, I'm going to fix it next weekend. After the game's over on Sunday, I'll spackle it up and get some paint and cover it. And then it's 2 weeks later, it's 3 weeks later, you don't even see it anymore until your buddy comes over and he says, what happened to the ceiling, right? That fresh set of eyes gives you a different perspective. So, Caesar's done a really great job of coming in and seeing the field from a little bit different perspective, because not having that general manager experience directly allows him to see it differently and maybe solve the problems in a way that traditionally some of us wouldn't have even considered.
No, that's awesome. And I think it's such an inspiring story because, when I speak to dealers and who are constantly focused now on expansion from a scale perspective, we talk about, look, every one of them is very well capitalized. They certainly have access to money. They have great OEM relationships and they have marketing dollars. But every single one of them tells me the hindrance is really around people, right? That they're not able to find enough people to essentially expand their business. And so I think it's great that you have an experience there, right? Where you get a different perspective, a different opportunity with somebody different. I always love to ask this question from everybody because I'm sure out of the thousands of people that are here, everyone's got a little bit different perspective of this. Where do you see the future of retail automotives?
Amazon's definitely made us all have to try a lot harder, right? And probably 85% of the way we're doing things in automotive today in 2024 if you had that 1984 playbook and brought it to today, probably a lot of it still carries over, right? Taking care of the customer, following up, all the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals. But it needs to get modernized, you know, and Jay and I were talking about this earlier today. So Amazon has really caused every retail environment to reanalyze how they're doing business, because customers want this, and then they want somebody to knock on their door in 4 hours and there's your groceries, right? So how do we as automotive start going in that direction? And I think what you guys are doing and the new product that you're launching today that Jay will talk about is a big part of that, right? Is getting this industry that has been very successful for the last 75 years, basically doing it the same way, to do it a little bit differently, because there's a changing of the guard, right? That's coming from a customer perspective, right? We're getting a different buyer over the next 3 years, 5 years, for sure, 10 years. And they will have a different mindset of what a great customer experience is, and it's not what we're doing today.
I'm sure you've seen this. There's so many videos where Jeff Bezos hammers the conversation of customer obsession. They are obsessed with the customer. And it's incredible, right? Because I think that the net result at a grand scale is this, right? That when you have an organization that's obsessed with customer experience, the net result is this. You know, we were talking earlier that little simple checkout button that looks so simple is a tremendous amount of complexity in the back end. And I think we liken that on the front end, or from, you know, automotive, you know, that whatever workflows that we can simplify and make easier, and whatever back end that needs to happen to, you know, the complexity that operates that, of course, that's our responsibility. But at the end of the day, we want to drive that front forward, seamless experience, because we know the many ripple effects, whether, you know, working our way back from the customer experience all the way through. So, no, that's outstanding. And, you know, this was something that resonated when you and I first spoke, and we could probably keep here, you know, speaking about this for hours, right? Because we both are passionate about it. But, you know, I'll finish with this, your story, along with, you know, the big announcement that we had with Asbury, for example, this year. You know, David Holt's statement was, look, we want to be the biggest, most, you know, guest-centric automotive retailer in the country. And I think that was like probably the underlying word that really stood out to me, and it stands out with you. There are many different technologies that people can use, and I think the words, the adjectives that you use are, I'm going to save money, it's cost effective, you know, et cetera. But, you know, we're really happy to hear that we're aligned with retailers such as yourself and the rest of the organizations who are customer centric. So really appreciate you kind of sharing their perspective with everyone. Amazing story. And thanks again for the partnership and the time, Dan.
You're welcome. And thanks for everything you bring to us.
You got it. Thank you.